Hello and welcome to the Harlow Jacket tutorial. This is our finished piece here. So I hope you enjoy this tutorial and good luck. So the very first step in the Harlow Jacket tutorial is to print out the pattern, and you can start by printing out the first page with the test square and just measuring the size of that test square, and once it's right you can go ahead and print out your full pattern at 100% scale. So once the full pattern is printed out, we can start taping our pages together. So each page is in order of number, and then there is a guide in the corners with diamonds, and at the side of each page there is a dotted line that you are to place the next page on top of. And they're just there as a guide to make sure all of the pages of the pattern line up with each other. Once we have all of our pattern pages stuck together, we can go ahead and cut out our pattern in whichever size you'd like. You just follow the graded line that corresponds to your chosen size. For this example, I've cut out the size extra small. Now, so here we have all of our pattern pieces cut out. So we have 5 pieces altogether for the Harlow jacket. We have our cuff, our collar, our back jacket piece, our front jacket piece, and our sleeve. So there's 3 patterns here that are to be cut on the folded edge of fabric. So that means if we have this as our fabric, for instance, we would fold it here in half, and then you place the folded edge of your pattern here. And that means that you'd only cut around here at the side, and that way you can fold open the fabric, and this will be for the cuff, and this will be the same for our collar. So the collar is going to be cut on the folded edge of the fabric all the way around, and that way you can just open it up perfectly like that, and both sides are exactly the same. And the same with our back jacket piece here. And then for our front jacket piece, we're going to cut out 2 lining and 2 main fabric. For the back jacket piece, 1 lining and 1 main fabric because it's cut on fold. For our sleeve, we're going to be cutting out 2 lining and 2 main fabric for our 2 sleeves. For our collar, we're going to be cutting out 2 of the main fabric. And for our cuff, we're going to be cutting out 2 of our main fabric on fold. So yeah, we have our 3 folded pieces, and then 5 pieces in total, and we need to now cut out our main fabric and our lining fabric, and then we can get into our sewing tutorial. So the next step is to place our pattern pages on top of our fabric, making sure that the folded edge of fabric is in line with the patterns that need to be cut on a folded edge, and then we're just going to cut out all of our pattern pieces for both the lining and the main fabric. Now, so the very first thing I'm going to start to do with our Harlow jacket, once we've cut out all of our pattern pieces, is sew our lining and our jacket fabric together. What you can also do is get adhesive spray and spray this and kind of glue it on. But what I'm just going to do is sew around the edge of this, just pin it in place to make sure the pattern and the lining are lined up, and then I'm just going to sew the outline of this pattern piece, and then I'm going to do this for all of our individual jacket pieces. So front and back stitch to start as normal. And then we're just going to sew our lining in place by sewing all the way around the edge of our front jacket piece. And then here we have the lining attached to our front jacket piece, sewn in all the way around the edge, and it's secure in place. I'm then just repeating the exact same step to the other side of the front jacket piece and pinning the lining all the way around the edge and sewing it in place. Now I'm going to do the very same for our sleeve pattern. I'm going to pin on our lining onto our sleeve all the way around the edge, and then doing the very same and sewing it in place. And then we're just going to do the very same for our second sleeve, pinning our lining in place and then sewing all around the edge to secure it. Now here I'm just adding the lining onto our back jacket piece, just pinning in a few key places all the way around the edge. And then sewing it in place. Yeah, so now we have the lining attached to the back jacket piece. And now all of our pieces are now lined. So the next thing I'm going to do is connect the front and back pieces. So now we are going to be connecting our front and back top pieces together. Go like this. And then we're just going to pin the front and back jacket pieces together at the shoulder seam, making sure the two good sides of the fabric are facing each other. And pinning all the way across on both shoulder seams. I'm going to sew in our two shoulder seams here. At a centimetre seam allowance. Front and back stitch at the start and at the very end. Now we're going to do the very same to this side. Yeah, so there we have our two shoulder seams attached. And the next thing I'm going to do is attach on our sleeve. So when we're attaching our sleeve to our jacket pattern, we want to make sure that the two good sides of the fabric are lying on top of each other. And then we're just going to connect from the very corner here and then pin all the way around. And that way, when we sew it in place and then turn it the right way, the right side of the fabric is out basically. Once we finish pinning our sleeve in place, we're just going to sew all the way around. Front and back stitch at the very start. Now, so there we have our sleeve attached. And then what I'm going to do for this jacket, I want to do contrasting cuffs. So what I'm going to do next now, before I fold our sleeve and back and front jacket together at the side, I'm going to just attach this contrasting cuff here, which we cut out on fold and is folded in half here, with the raw edge being connected to the sleeve pattern and being sewn in place here. Now that I have finished adding that, I'm going to fold this in half and then join both our jacket pieces at the side here. Make sure they line up evenly. Now we're just going to pin all the way up the side of the jacket to the very end of the sleeve. And once we have everything pinned, we're just going to sew straight from the bottom of the jacket at the side all the way down to the edge of the sleeve, and then we're just going to sew this in place. Front and back stitch at the start and at the very end. When it comes to our seams, I'm going to put bias tape on our seams. Now, so we're going to do the same for the other side and attach our sleeve. Once we have our sleeve pinned in place, I'm just going to sew all that I pinned. Now the next thing I'm going to do is add our cuff. Now we're going to connect our sleeve and the sides of our jacket. So just line them up nicely. Once we've pinned the side of our jacket right up to the sleeve, we're just going to sew this in place all the way along the side. Yeah, so there we have our sleeve and cuff fully finished, and that looks fab. I love how that looks. Perfect. Perfect. So the next thing we're going to do is finish the hem of our jacket. So we're just going to fold up the fabric at the bottom twice. So 1 centimeter first and then another 1 centimeter. So your hem can be 2 centimeters. Depending on the length that you'd like your jacket to be, you can make it shorter or longer. So just roll this fabric up and then pin it in place and then sew all the way along around the bottom of the jacket. And it's good to do this step before adding your zip to your jacket. So the next thing we're going to do is sew our zip in place. So as you can see, I've just placed it, the zip edge facing out and the fabric end facing in, and I have wrapped it there at the edge, and then I'm just going to sew all the way up. And then once we've sewn that in place, what we're going to do is turn it inwards. So turn this inwards, and then we're going to pin this in place here. And then what we're going to do is a top stitch straight down. So just pulling the fabric over slightly and pinning in place, and then top stitch and sewing all the way down the front of the jacket. Yeah, so there we have our finished zip on this side, and I'm just going to do the very same to the other side. Now we're going to do the very same and then fold it inwards. Now, so once we have our zip and everything done, one of our last steps is to make our collar. And what I'm just going to do now is make sure the two good sides of the fabric are facing each other. And then I'm just going to press it in place. And then what I'm going to do is pin from here to here and then all the way around the edge. And I'm going to keep this part here at the back open. And then I'll use this opening at the back of the collar neckline to turn it inside out. That just means we'll have a really nice neat finish here at the front and all the way around, and then we'll just do bias tape around the very back of the collar once we've attached it to our jacket. Side of the fabric I want on the outside, the good side basically. So I'm just going to pin this in place now. So as I said, we're going to sew from here to here and all the way around the outside and then flip it inside out. And when we're sewing this in place, we want to leave a seam allowance of about 1.5 centimeters all the way around. In the example here, I've done it very close to the edge, but I altered the pattern to include seam allowance. And the seam allowance just makes sure that the collar is sewn in securely and it's not likely to rip at any edge. So once it's finished, you can then cut off kind of the excess fabric around the collar before turning it inside out, particularly around the corners. Now that we've sewn around all the edges, what I'm just going to do is turn it inside out so that we have the right side of the fabric facing out. So I'm just going to put my arm in here and turn it inside out. So it just takes a little bit of faffing. Once we finish turning the collar inside out, we have it finished and ready to be attached to our jacket. Just gonna press this in place here now. So our next step here is to attach our collar onto the neckline of our jacket and just pin this in place. Now I'm just going to sew this in place, and then at the very end I'll have to put bias tape at the back. Now I've just added on the seam cover to the back collar neckline, because this part of the collar was open. So this is just going to give it a cleaner finish at the back. Now, so here we have the Harlow jacket all finished. Very happy with the way it turned out. I love the leather cuffs and the matching collar, leather collar. This was scrap fabric that I had left over from another piece, so delighted to use it. And I love the contrast of the white leather with this fabric. I think it turned out really nice, and yeah, I'm buzzing with it. I made a slight boo-boo and stitched on this zip the wrong way, so I was wondering why I was not able to zip up my jacket. And then my boyfriend figured out that it was upside down. So yeah, I need to enjoy the pleasure of unpicking all of these threads and then just restitching it the other way around, which is great fun, but I'll do that another day. But from the outside, it looks very pretty, very happy with the way it turned out. Yeah, I think it's very cool. So I hope you enjoyed making, and there's going to be a few tweaks I'm going to make to the pattern after this one to make sure it's just right for you guys. But yeah, very simple nonetheless. Just stitch your zips the right way.